Every woman wanted the cowboy, but he risked his life for the one who never chased after him. Part 1. The Man Everyone Watched. The town of Red Hollow was small, quiet, and full of familiar faces. Dusty roads stretched between wooden buildings, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. Life moved slowly there, and news traveled fast. But ever since Elias Boone arrived, things felt a little different. Elias was not loud or attention-seeking. He did not try to impress anyone. Still, people noticed him the moment he walked into town. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, calm, steady, and confident without saying a word. Or maybe it was the quiet kindness in his actions. He helped without being asked. One morning, he fixed a broken wagon wheel for an old farmer. Another day, he carried heavy supplies for the shopkeeper without expecting payment. When children struggled to reach apples from a tree, Elias would lift them up with a small smile and walk away before they could even say thank you. People talked about him all the time. "Did you see what he did yesterday? He's not like other cowboys. There's something different about him." And of course, many women in town admired him. Some would dress a little nicer when they knew he might pass by. Others would try to start conversations, hoping he would stay longer. A few even imagined what it would be like if he noticed them. But Elias never stayed. He was always polite. He would nod, listen, and reply kindly, but he never lingered. He never gave anyone the feeling that he was interested in more. It wasn't that he was cold, it was just that he seemed distant, like a man passing through, even when he wasn't leaving. No one knew much about his past, and he never spoke about it. When people asked, he would simply smile and change the topic. It made him even more mysterious. And in a small town like Red Hollow, mystery only made people more curious. Yet, among all the attention, there was one person who did not seem to care at all. Clara Whitfield. Clara was the town's school teacher. She lived a simple life, waking early each day to prepare lessons and spending her afternoons teaching children how to read and write. She was calm, focused, and never involved in town gossip. While others talked about Elias, Clara barely listened. She had seen him, of course. It was impossible not to. But to her, he was just another man passing through town, no different from the travelers who came and went. One afternoon, Elias walked past the schoolhouse. Children's laughter filled the air as Clara stood near the door, watching them play. Elias slowed his steps, noticing how she spoke gently to the children, guiding them with patience. For a moment, he simply watched. Clara turned and saw him standing there. Instead of smiling or trying to speak, she gave a small, polite nod, nothing more, and returned her attention to the children. That was all. No curiosity, no admiration, no effort. Elias continued walking, but something about that moment stayed with him. Later that day, he found himself thinking about her again. It was strange. Many people tried to get his attention, but he never thought about them twice. Yet this woman, who barely noticed him, somehow remained in his mind. The next morning, he passed by the schoolhouse again. This time, Clara was arranging books on a wooden table outside. The wind gently moved a few loose pages, and she quickly reached out to hold them in place. Elias stepped closer without thinking. "Need a hand?" he asked quietly. Clara looked up, slightly surprised. She paused for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, thank you." There was no excitement in her voice, no nervousness, just simple appreciation. Elias helped gather the books and place them neatly on the table. Their hands almost touched once, but Clara simply continued her work without reacting. "Thank you," she said again when they finished. "You're welcome," Elias replied. There was a brief silence. Most people would have tried to continue the conversation, but Clara didn't. She picked up another book and began reading something written inside it. Elias waited for a second, then gave a small nod and walked away. But this time, he didn't forget. For the first time since arriving in Red Hollow, Elias Boone felt something unfamiliar. Not excitement, not pride, but curiosity. And without realizing it, the man everyone watched had just started noticing someone who wasn't watching him at all. Part 2. The One Who Didn't Try. After that quiet moment near the schoolhouse, something changed for Elias Boone. He did not understand it at first. Nothing big had happened. There were no long conversations, no special smiles, no reason for him to think about Clara Whitfield more than anyone else. And yet, he did. Days passed, but her calm face and simple voice stayed in his mind. Elias continued his usual life in Red Hollow. He helped people, worked when needed, and kept his distance from attention. But now, without planning it, his steps often led him near the schoolhouse. Sometimes he would pass by slowly, just to see if she was there. Clara, however, did not change at all. She continued teaching the children, correcting their mistakes with patience, and encouraging them to try again. She never looked around to see who was watching. She never tried to impress anyone. Her focus was always on her work. One afternoon, Elias saw her sitting under a tree with a small group of children. She was reading a story aloud, her voice soft but clear. The children listened carefully, their eyes full of interest. Elias stopped at a distance. He noticed how different she was from the others in town. While many people spoke loudly to be heard, Clara spoke simply, and people still listened. While others tried to gain attention, she seemed comfortable without it. For the first time in a long while, Elias did not feel like walking away. Instead, he stayed there for a few minutes, quietly watching. Later, as the children ran off laughing, Clara began collecting her books again. This time, Elias stepped forward before thinking too much. "You read well," he said. Clara looked at him, slightly surprised again. "Thank you," she replied. "That story, the children liked it," he added. She gave a small nod. "They like stories that feel real." Elias thought about that for a moment. "Do you?" Clara paused, then answered honestly. "Yes, I prefer things that are simple and true." Her words were not meant to impress, but they stayed with him. Most people in town tried to say the right things around Elias. They wanted him to notice them. But Clara spoke as if it didn't matter what he thought. And somehow, that made her words more meaningful. Over the next few days, their paths crossed more often. Sometimes Elias would help carry books. Other times he would stand nearby while Clara spoke to the children. Their conversations were still short, but they were real. Clara did not ask him about his past. She did not try to learn his story or guess who he was. Instead, she spoke about her students, the town, and simple everyday things. Once, she even disagreed with him. It happened when Elias said, "People in this town seem to depend on others too much." Clara shook her head slightly. "Or maybe they trust each other." Elias looked at her, surprised. "Depending and trusting are not always the same," she added. There was no anger in her voice, no challenge, just a different point of view. Elias did not reply immediately. Most people would have agreed with him without question, but Clara didn't, and he respected that. That evening, as Elias walked through the quiet streets, he realized something important. He was no longer passing by the schoolhouse by accident. He was choosing to go there. Meanwhile, the rest of the town continued as usual. People still talked about Elias. Some noticed that he spent more time near the schoolhouse now. "I think he's interested in someone," one woman whispered. "But who?" another asked. They looked around, guessing names, but none of them thought of Clara. Because Clara never tried. She never waited for him. She never looked for him in a crowd. Even when he appeared, she treated him the same way she treated everyone else. And that was exactly what made her different. One morning, as the sun rose over Red Hollow, Elias arrived at the schoolhouse earlier than usual. Clara was already there, sweeping the front steps. "You're here early," he said. "So are you," she replied without stopping her work. Elias smiled slightly. Do you always start your day like this? Yes, she said. It helps keep things in order. He watched her for a moment, then quietly picked up another broom nearby and began helping. Clara glanced at him but said nothing. There was no need. For the first time, they worked side by side in comfortable silence. No pressure, no expectations, just something simple and real. And in that quiet morning, Elias Boone began to understand something he had never felt before. The one person who did not try to win his attention was slowly becoming the one he could not ignore. Part 3. The Risk No One Expected. Life in Red Hollow continued as usual, but for Elias Boone, something inside him had clearly changed. He still helped people, still kept his calm nature, and still avoided attention, but now his thoughts often returned to Clara Whitfield. It was no longer just curiosity. It was something deeper, something he could not easily explain. And yet, Clara remained the same. She did not treat him differently. She did not wait for him or expect him to show up. If he came, she spoke. If he didn't, she carried on with her day. Her life did not depend on anyone else. That was what made her strong. One morning, the town woke up to quiet but concerning news. Clara had left early the previous day to visit a small family living outside the town. One of her students had been sick, and Clara, as always, chose to help. It was not unusual for her to do such things, but this time, she had not returned. At first, people thought she might have stayed overnight. Maybe the child needed more care. Maybe the journey took longer than expected. But as the hours passed, worry began to grow. By afternoon, small groups of people gathered, talking in low voices. She should have been back by now. The road isn't easy out there. Maybe something delayed her. Still, no one made a clear decision. Some were concerned, but also unsure. The land outside Red Hollow was wide and confusing, and not everyone felt ready to go searching without knowing where to begin. Elias heard the news while standing near the general store. He did not say anything at first. He simply listened. The voices around him grew louder, filled with questions but no action. People were waiting, for someone else to decide, for more information, for time to pass. But Elias did not wait. Without asking for help, without making a plan for others to follow, he turned and walked toward the edge of town. One man called after him, "Where are you going?" Elias stopped briefly. To find her. There was no hesitation in his voice. He prepared quickly, taking water, supplies, and his horse. He did not know exactly where Clara had gone, but he knew the direction. And for him, that was enough to begin. The sun was slowly lowering as he rode out. The land beyond Red Hollow was quiet and open, with long stretches of dry ground and scattered trees. The path was not always clear, and signs of travel could disappear quickly. Elias stayed focused. He looked for small details, marks on the ground, broken branches, anything that could guide him forward. His movements were steady, patient, and careful. Hours passed. The sky turned orange, then slowly darkened. The air grew cooler, and the silence became deeper. But Elias did not turn back. For the first time in a long while, he felt a strong pull, not from duty, not from habit, but from something personal. Clara mattered. That thought stayed with him as he continued. As night approached, Elias finally noticed something. Near a quiet stretch of land, he saw faint tracks, signs that a horse had slowed down or struggled. He moved closer, examining the ground carefully. Then he saw it. A piece of cloth, lightly caught on a low branch. He recognized it. It belonged to Clara. Elias felt a small sense of relief, but he did not stop. Instead, he followed the trail further. Not long after, he spotted a figure sitting near a tree in the distance. It was Clara. She looked tired, but calm. Her horse stood nearby, unable to move properly. Elias rode closer and stopped. Clara looked up, surprised to see him. "You came?" she said quietly. Elias stepped down from his horse. "You didn't return." She gave a small nod. "My horse couldn't continue. I decided to wait until morning." "You should have sent word," he said. "There was no one nearby," she replied simply. For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Clara asked, "Did the town send you?" Elias shook his head. "No." She looked at him, a little confused. "Then why did you come?" Elias paused. He did not have a perfect answer, but after a moment, he said the truth. "Because I wanted to." Clara did not respond immediately. She studied his face, as if trying to understand something new. For the first time, she saw not just the quiet cowboy everyone talked about, but a man who chose to act when others didn't. And in that quiet moment, something began to shift, not just for Elias, but for her too. Part 4. The Woman Who Stayed. The night was calm, and the sky above them was filled with quiet stars. Elias set up a small fire so Clara could stay warm. He made sure her horse was resting comfortably and gave it water. Clara watched him silently, noticing every small thing he did. He did not try to act like a hero. He did not expect thanks. He simply did what needed to be done. "Thank you," Clara said softly after a while. Elias nodded. "You would have done the same." Clara thought about that, then gave a small smile. "Yes, I would have." They sat near the fire, not saying much. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It felt easy, like they did not need to fill every moment with words. After some time, Clara spoke again. "Everyone in town talks about you," she said. Elias looked at the fire. "I know." "They think they understand you," she added. "And do you?" he asked. Clara paused. "I didn't try to," she answered honestly. "I thought you were just passing through like many others." Elias gave a small smile. "Maybe I thought the same about everyone here." Clara looked at him carefully. "But you stayed." "For now," he replied. She noticed the way he said it, not as a promise, but not as a plan to leave either. For the first time, Clara felt curious. Not about the stories people told, but about the man sitting beside her. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the open land. The air was fresh, and everything felt quiet and still. Elias checked Clara's horse again. It was better, but still not strong enough for a long journey. "We'll take it slow," he said. "No rush." Clara nodded. "I don't mind." They began the journey back to Red Hollow, walking side by side for most of the way. Elias held the horse gently, making sure it stayed calm. Clara walked beside him, matching his pace. The road felt different now, not long and empty, but shared. Along the way, they spoke more than they ever had before. Clara talked about why she became a teacher. "I wanted to do something that mattered," she said, "even if it's small." Elias listened carefully. "It doesn't sound small." She smiled slightly. "Most people think it is." "They're wrong," he said simply. Then Clara asked, "What about you?" Elias was quiet for a moment. "I've moved from place to place for a long time," he said, "helping where I can, not staying too long." "Why not stay?" she asked. He looked ahead. "I never found a reason to." Clara did not respond right away, but something in her expression changed. By the time they reached the edge of Red Hollow, the town had already started to worry. People gathered as soon as they saw them returning. "She's back!" someone called. Relief spread quickly. A few people rushed forward, asking if Clara was all right. She assured them she was fine, explaining simply what had happened. Then someone looked at Elias. "You went out there alone?" the man asked. Elias shrugged lightly. "It was nothing." But the people knew it wasn't nothing. They saw it clearly now. The same man they admired had chosen to act without asking for attention or reward. And for once, Elias did not stay to hear their praise. Instead, he stepped back, letting Clara stand among her people. Clara noticed. As the crowd slowly settled, she walked toward him. "You're leaving?" she asked. "Just giving you space," Elias replied. Clara shook her head slightly. "You don't have to." Elias looked at her, unsure. For the first time, Clara did something she had never done before. She chose to stay. Not because of the town, not because of what people said, but because of him. "You didn't have to come for me," she said quietly. "I know," Elias replied. "But you did," she added. He nodded. Clara took a small step closer. "And now, you don't have to leave either." Elias looked at her, surprised. No one had ever said that to him before, not as a request, but as a choice. "I don't chase after people," Clara continued softly. "You know that." Elias gave a small smile. "I noticed." "But I don't ignore what matters either," she said. There was a quiet understanding between them now. No pressure, no rush, just something real, slowly growing. Elias looked around the town, the same place that once felt temporary, like a stop along the way. But now, it felt different, because of her. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel like leaving. "I think," he said slowly, "I found a reason to stay." Clara smiled, not brightly, not dramatically, but in a way that felt true. And in that quiet town of Red Hollow, where everyone once watched the cowboy from a distance, he was no longer standing alone, because the one woman who never chased after him was the one he chose to walk beside every single day.